Hailing frequencies open. Welcome back to Trek Retrek here on Geek the F Out. I'm Captain Johnny,
I'm Ensign Kayla.
and we are here to talk about episode 21, The Return of the Archons. TVguide.com says, I'm going to scroll, hang on.
Not to be confused with Akron, Ohio.
No. TVGuide.com says Kirk's search for survivors of a missing ship leads to a unique society ruled by Landru, where visitors are treated like infections, which must be absorbed or destroyed.
You must be absorbed or destroyed.
Yeah,
what century are we in? That was literally the first thing on my notes.
Right. I think the most telling thing about this episode was when I randomly got a message from you, and you're just like, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah. I still don't know what I watched. I've watched it a couple times now, and I don't know, it felt like a fucking fever dream. I did not know what was going on. I don't think anyone in the show knew what was going on. Not just because of what happened was crazy, but also just like the pacing was weird, and then some of the scenes were really dragged out, so it just felt like it was all over the place. Yeah. So it wasn't just like what was happening, it was also I like the editing and the direction of it as well, I think. It's just a lot.
Yeah. I'm watching and I'm like, this does not feel like an episode of Star Trek. Like, I feel like this is like an episode of The Outer Limits or like The Twilight Zone or a different show that just happens to have
Yep.
the Enterprise crew in it. And it's not. Let's talk a little bit
Totally.
about that during episode trivia. But
Okay.
yeah, the first thing, like you said, what century and is it? The first thing I wrote down was like, are we on the Andy Griffith set again? Like,
Yeah. Very much obviously a set that, many shows and movies have used over the years. Yeah, yeah. It was very interesting, and then you get these monks that come in that are attacking them with these Gandalf staffs.
yeah,
um
I literally wrote down mindfuck monks.
yes. Exactly. Yeah, and completely turns Sulu.
Yeah,
And
Sulu
so
cracks.
Sulu gets beamed back and is just like, "Oh, it's so beautiful and it's paradise and Landru." And Kirk's like, "The fuck is going on here?" He's like, "They're the sweetest in the universe, blah blah blah." Um and then Kirk, Spock, Bones, and 3 others beam down to investigate, and Spock is in a black monk robe, and I was like, "Is this just to hide his ears?" Or I don't know. What was the reasoning for him being in a different outfit?
That's what I thought at
Any
first,
idea?
but then later, like, he doesn't give a fuck. He's just walking around with his ears out.
Yeah.
Nobody mentions it. Nobody says anything. Like,
Mhm.
it's not important. It was a little
I
strange and
feel like
inconsistent.
maybe yeah, I feel like maybe he realized they were in such a trance that they weren't even gonna notice anyways, so that's why he stopped caring. I think he maybe
Maybe.
cared at the beginning and then, yeah, stopped caring after that. Um, but yeah, so a man walks by them, which they were like, "He has, like, vacant contentment. Note how odd it is." Um and like says it was very much like I don't know if you've seen Handmaid's Tale at
Mm-mm.
all.
I have
It
not
was
seen
very
it,
much
no.
like the greetings that they do. It's like, "Oh, may it please you," like these very like short little phrases that they use to each other that they all use to each other. Um it was very, very odd, and I was like, "Is this guy a robot?" And then And then Tula comes up and is like, "Oh, does your dad have a place to put them up? Like the red hour is coming up."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, my dad can take you." And then hits 6 o'clock, red hour happens, and the fucking purge.
Yeah.
It's a
So
fucking purge.
I literally wrote
It
down
is a
that got dark quick. It's the fucking purge.
yeah. Literally the purge. Like pretty sure the purge based it off of this, not gonna lie. Especially I mean, all I really know about the purge is like it's like a day and you can do whatever the fuck you want essentially.
Yeah.
So I think I'm guessing it was 6 a.m. when it stopped because he like looked at the time in the morning. So not quite a day, but like overnight.
Yeah, it seemed like it was 12
Um,
hours because it started when it hit 6 and then it ended
yeah,
when it hit 6.
it's 6. Yeah. And yeah, of course, someone runs up and makes out with Kirk because like has to happen every episode. And she like jumps on him too. I'm like, damn girl, okay. Yeah, so of course has to make out with someone. And then they go and seek refuge in her dad's place, Rieger's place.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 3 old men there, and they're like, "What are you doing here? Like, why aren't you out at the festival?" And start to like question them, but
Mm-hmm.
Rieger doesn't really seem to care too much. He's like, they're just looking for a place, like they just don't know the customs, blah blah blah. And but one of the other dudes is like, no, the lawmakers need to, what is it, lawmakers, I put it down, lawgivers need to
Lawgivers. Yeah.
know about this. And so he goes off to tattletale on them. um and then they ask about Landrew to Rieger, and Rieger's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. um I'm trying to remember if, I don't know. Do you have anything in your notes up to that point?
No, the next thing I have is the next morning. Um,
Okay. Okay. So yeah, they're trying to figure out what to do, and pretty much like, yeah, the next morning Kirk is already up and he hears
but
Tula.
was he up or was like he looked like he was sleeping standing up? Like that's what I wrote down.
Oh,
Is Kirk sleeping standing up? Because he was like leaned back against the bed, like against the bunk bed or whatever it was, and it like
oh, I thought he was just chilling, but maybe
he might have been like, did he stay up all night? Has he not slept? I'm assuming they
I got the
probably did
I got the
watches.
impression, yeah, I got the impression that they either did watches or he didn't sleep.
Yeah.
So, one or the other. Um, so they wake up and Lula, whatever her name is, was sobbing
Tula.
hysterically. Yeah. I put Lula, but I think I meant Tula. Was sobbing hysterically. And they go out and help her, like Bones essentially sedates her. And of course, like one of the crewmen once again says to Rieger, like, you're like okay with your daughter being out there, and he's like, she needs to partake in the festival. And I'm like, the fuck is this shit? And also, like, I don't know if they were trying to imply something that happened to her.
Yeah, I'm
What
not
did you
sure.
think?
I feel like the implication was that something not good happened to her while she was out during the
Yeah,
festival.
something not good. I don't know. I don't want to like speculate too much because like it wasn't specifically, like I didn't see any clues to any kind of specific harm, but something harmed her.
Mm-hmm.
Um and she was very upset by it. Um so yeah, they sedate her, and they accuse Kirk and the crew of being Archons.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk's like, what if we are? And which I just thought was funny because I was like, "Oh, why are you playing along with it like you're not?" I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what, like, Kirk was trying to be clever and like investigative, but also like deceptive at the same time, and I don't know if it quite worked the way that he wanted it to.
Mm-mm. I mean, it kind of did, but I don't know. Don't know if it fully worked.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So yeah, the monks come in and they essentially kill the dude, uh
Tamar.
Tamar.
Yeah,
And I thought
because Hakum's a snitch.
wait,
He brought them back.
hey come as the snitch. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Um yeah, they kill him. I'm like, is there no democracy? Like they're just basing it off of this one dude's word right now?
Mm-hmm.
um and then they're like ordered to go to the absorption chambers, and that's when but they start convening with Landrew. So that's when Rieger is like, let's get out of here. And so they run away and they have to stun some people, which one of those people they stun ends up being O'Neill, who was with Sulu at the beginning. And so they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, let's take him with us. They find shelter in this place that pretty much looks like the inside of an old castle, which I'm pretty sure they've used for one of the previous
Mm-hmm.
episodes where they had a castle, because there's been several now. um
Yeah.
it kind of looked menagerie-esque. I don't
Yeah,
know if you noticed that.
like the prison area that Pike was kept in.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that
Mhm.
cave like, but also, in the menagerie it had plexiglass over
Yeah,
places. Yeah.
exactly. And then Rieger pulls out this light square thing, which
Yeah,
was
like an LED panel.
cool. Yeah. And they're like, "Wow, that technology is so advanced for you."
Mm-hmm.
They're very intrigued by I just thought it was very random, but I don't know how much it, really helped with the plot or anything besides maybe just trying to figure out, like, what was going on there, but I
Yeah, I
don't
think
think it really helped anything.
it was just foreshadowing that there was more going on than we were aware
Meets
of.
the eye. That makes sense. Um, so then Kirk calls up to the Enterprise and finds out that they're being attacked by heat rays. They're like, fuck. Then Lander shows up, but he's a projection. And essentially, like they talk for a bit, and then there's this like loud noise they pass out, which ends up being like a hypersonic sound wave, they say later.
Yeah.
Um
And Landrew is a Xanadu looking motherfucker. Like, I was
Also,
getting Xanadu and like uh Ziggy Stardust like kind of vibes
he was giving
off of
vibes.
Landrew.
He was
Yeah.
giving vibes indeed. You'll see later what vibe I got from him. Um and then let's see. Then Kirk wakes up, O'Neill and McCoy are gone. And oh yeah, that's when they were like, oh, it was a hypersonic sound wave that knocked them out. And then they realize their phasers are gone too. And Spock notices how they react like how a computer would react. So that was their first little hint as to what is going on.
Mm-hmm. The
And the
lawgivers, you
monk,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the monks come in and get Kirk, and he's tied up in this weird contraption where they're, supposed to absorb him, which, lol, the innuendos in this.
Mm-hmm.
um, but right after that happens, Marplon comes in, this dude in these orange robes, and he relieves the monks of duty. And so then when Spock comes in, he's like, oh, I couldn't help your friends, but I can help you now. blah blah. Or no. He made it so Kirk didn't get it. That's right. It wasn't just
Yeah.
him. Yeah. For some reason I thought it was after Kirk, but no, it's because Kirk just pretended to be
Yeah.
changed.
And like as soon as Marplon walked in, I'm like, this dude's a fake. Like he's the because they mentioned that there was a third. Rieger mentioned that there was a third person that they didn't. I don't remember if he said they didn't even know who it was. Like
He didn't know. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, it's
Mm-hmm.
got to be this dude. Because just as soon as he walked in, I'm like, it's this dude, and that might be because
Mm,
like I don't remember a lot of this. Like it must be it's one of those episodes that didn't stick with me.
mm-hmm.
Maybe that little bit of insight, I'm like, this dude's not brainwashed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, as soon as he walked in the room, I'm like, he's not part of the cult.
Yeah. um so yeah, so let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah, he tells Spock, he's like, "Oh, I'm one of the good ones, like Kirk is fine." He gives he gives Spock the phasers, and like Spock also pretends to be of the body. So then Spock and Kirk talk about, interfering with the society, and Kirk asks if it's living and growing society, and he's like, it's not, so we need to do something about this. And then Marplon, I keep spelling it Marlpon in my notes. Marplon and Rieger come in to give the weapons back. And McCoy pretty much figures out that they're like whispering and freaks out on them because he's been changed. I don't know if I mentioned that before, that
Yeah,
McCoy.
McCoy did get brainwashed, and so did the
Yeah,
other.
he did.
Yeah,
He did. Oh, yeah, I skipped over that in my notes. McCoy reappears and is clearly brainwashed. FYI. um yeah, so he yells out, and Kirk pretty much has to subdue Bones. And he's like, "Don't make me do this. You're my best friend. I love you." Exactly like that. And then two monks come in and they take him out with some Kirk foo.
yeah, and I'm like, why didn't they just? I have written down, I'm like, why didn't they just do that in the first place? Like when the
No
first time the
idea.
monks came into the prison area, like into the dungeon, why didn't they just
Hmm.
do that immediately instead of waiting all this
No
time?
clue.
And at this point
That is a
too,
great question.
suddenly Rigger's like, nope, can't do it. I love Landrew. I'm sorry, I can't go against him. Like he's
Yeah,
completely loses his nerve out of nowhere for no apparent
yeah.
reason.
That was very weird, but then they convinced Marplon to take them to Landrew in their monks' uh, costumes that they stole from those two.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, before they do, they talk to the ship, and they're still getting attacked. And Kirk tells them to guard Sulu, which smart. Um, so yeah, that's when they ask Rieger about Landrew. And he's like, "Oh yeah, he brought peace and tranquility." And then yeah, he freaked out. And then yeah, that's when Spock does the Vulcan nerve pinch on him. So they go to see Landrew in the Hall of Audiences, which
Mm-hmm.
even Marplon was like, "I don't want to go in there." I was like, "What? Like, aren't you supposed to be revolting against this dude? Like, what are you scared of?" Um I mean, I kind of get it, but still, it was interesting. So Landry's projection shows up, and pretty quickly they phaser it away. And what is behind it? Oh, a computer, a
Computer.
machine.
Yeah,
We may or may not have seen this trope before a couple of
maybe.
times. Maybe.
Similar, not
Um,
exactly this one, but
yeah,
this is what happens, folks. Skynet, uh, Landrew, same thing. Don't let
same,
AI
same.
take over. The
Yes.
Matrix. We're all going to be batteries if we let this
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. So Kirk starts like arguing with this machine slash Landrew. And then he's about to phaser it again, but his phaser is neutralized and he just is questioning it. Spock says like creativity helps the health of the body. And they're pretty much trying to convince the machine that, according to its own protocol, it is the evil, so it needs to be destroyed. But like this scene was also just very much getting dragged out a lot.
Yeah.
That I was like, what the fuck is the point of this scene? I literally wrote that in my notes.
It's just it was a long way of getting to like the Landru's like directive is like nurture the society. But the way that Landru has been nurturing the society is not nurturing the society. It's stagnant. It's not like, so it's a paradox. Kirk catches it in a paradox, and
essentially. And yeah, he asks if he wants to help the body or to hurt it. And yeah, that's when we learned that like Landru had built the machine 6,000 years ago and just, obviously is not around anymore. And yeah, Kirk tells the machine if it's evil and the evil must be destroyed according to the prime directive. And then it starts to combust and dies. And they call back to the ship and they say that the heat rays have stopped and Sulu is back to normal. So they beam back up and all is good. That's it.
And they all live happily ever after, apparently.
They all live happily ever after. Like, what a fucking clusterfuck of an episode.
Indeed.
I feel like there was a lot more to it where I definitely got lost in it and was like, just what is happening right now? I don't know. That's all for like specific things, but
yeah, it's
talk more generally.
Yeah, and it's hard to know where to put like this discussion about the episode, because it's a really interesting episode. Like, it's a good, even though now in this, 60 years later, this is kind of a contrived plot. Like, it's an interesting execution of it, and it just doesn't, it's just weird because it doesn't feel like, it feels like an episode of a different show. Like, it really feels like it should be an episode of The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits. It doesn't feel like, to me, feel like an episode of Star Trek.
Totally. At least from what I've watched so far.
Yeah, it obviously is an episode of Star Trek because, well, it's an episode of Star Trek, but it just doesn't have the same
Not
feeling.
The same. Not the same. Totally. And I'm sure you'll get to it in trivia as well, but yeah, I'm very, very curious. Whether it was a different director, writer, someone involved. And just the concept of it, there's definitely some like plot / loopholes. Like, how often does this fucking festival take place? And what the fuck is this festival anyways? I have so many questions. Yeah, and they have this telepathic mind control, but the festival is only for young people, like the old people don't partake in it. Very interesting. Which makes me, obviously there's like a sexual element to it, as we saw of the festival. So I'm like, maybe part of it is to like breed.
Yeah, it might be.
I don't know. So like the old people, the old people aren't so good at that.
And they go with a lie that they're from like I forget, the South, the West, somewhere else.
The Valley.
So like, it's one of those things in sci-fi shows, and we get this with Star Wars a lot too. Like, they go down to a planet, and obviously, like, this happens because it probably wouldn't be an interesting story or like a good storytelling if they didn't, but they just so happen to end up in the right place. Like,
Yeah, they
planets are
happen to run
huge.
into yeah, that's
They just
true.
they just happen to find the right, like, what's going on in this society on the opposite side of the world, because they just happen to beam down into the city where Landru is housed.
I mean, I wonder I mean, but, like, is that where he's housed? Like, I wonder if there's, like, multiple locations of it, and,
It
like,
could be.
he could control the whole planet, and, like, people could think like, maybe the radius of the people he controls, like, once you get out of that area, kind of like in WandaVision, like, once you
Hmm.
get past there, his, like, control isn't as strong, so that's why
it
people from the valley I don't know. I
it
don't know,
could
I have so
also
many questions.
it could also just be like a network kind of thing, so maybe like every town has an audience hall, and it's like the internet, like
Mhm.
that is just the
It's like a
server
hub.
for, yeah, it's just a server for Landru, who the central processing unit for this Landru is somewhere else, but it's all interconnected.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. So if
confusing
you
it
take
at the
out one
terminal, yeah, it takes down the whole system. I don't know.
yeah.
It's like that thing. It's similar in Star Wars. They're looking for someone and they're on this planet and they just happen to find the right
Yeah.
place on the planet every time. Like, I get that it's you got to be concise for storytelling, but
Mhm.
it's, yeah, like they just happen to end up in the right place at the exactly where they needed to be.
Exactly.
That's where suspension
Exactly.
of disbelief comes
I was about to say that, like, you definitely have to
in.
suspend disbelief a bit. Um, but overall, yeah, what an episode. Uh, I yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what I, like, make of it,
I think it says
slash how to
something that
rank it.
it's the only episode, I think, aside from I think it was uh Kodos the Executioner's episode, you're like, I can't wait to talk about this one. Uh
I said Mud it was Mud's Women.
oh yeah, Mud's Women. You were like, I can't wait to talk
Mhm.
about this one. That's the only
I
other
don't think I
episode that
said I can't wait to talk about this. I was just like, "What in the clusterfuck is this?"
yeah, that's the
But
only other episode
still,
you've sent me a message about before we got together, because we typically don't talk
we
about
try
what
not
we've watched
to.
at all until we
But this
actually sit
one, I
down to
was
record.
like, I feel like I'm in a fever dream. I feel like I'm high. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And once again, it's not just because of what was happening. What was happening in and of itself was crazy enough. But yeah, just like the pacing and the scenes. And yeah, there's definitely some like plot holes in there. And then that scene at the end with Kirk and talking to the machine, I was just like, okay, why are we still going on about this? It was all over the place, but like still very entertaining, kept me engaged. Yeah, it was like kind of hard to take notes at sometimes just because I was like so into it. And then also part of me was like trying to figure it out as well. It's like, how does this work if there's telepathy, but then some people like are immune to it? Immune to the absorption.
Hmm.
Very interesting. I, like, wonder if through the 6,000 years that, like, people have evolved to the point where they're no longer susceptible to it, you know?
Maybe
Who knows? I don't know. So many questions.
certain people have, like, what was the catalyst for Rieger, Hakem, and Marplon, like, rebelling essentially? Because
Yeah.
not Hakem, Rieger, Tamar, and Marplon. Hakem was the one who was still
Mhm.
like
Hakem
the
was the
devout,
snitch.
like, yeah.
Hakem was the snitch. We hate snitches.
And they never really, like, and I guess the Archons were the
Yeah,
previous,
do we know
like,
who the Archons are?
I believe they were the previous ship, because the whole reason that uh the Enterprise was here is because they were looking for uh a ship called the Archon, which disappeared
Okay.
in this area 100 years earlier. Um,
Mm.
so the Archons must be the people from that ship who landed on the planet and were absorbed, I guess.
Hmm.
So
I
I
guess
don't know.
so.
There's a lot that is not explored, but
No.
yeah,
There's a lot of fuckery.
indeed.
So much
So
fuckery.
I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else you want to, or should we go to favorite lines and moments?
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around things. If I think of anything later, but as of now, yeah, lines and moments.
Yeah. So
This whole episode as a moment for me. You can go first.
I only have two things written down, and they're both pretty late in the episode. So if you have anything earlier,
Okay. In terms of lines, let me see. I have they're the sweetest in the universe. Sulu says that at the beginning. Um this isn't that significant, but I just thought it was funny when Kirk said to Spock, "You and I have some serious thinking to do." Um there's a few of that's what they said. Spock does his totally illogical line. I definitely have some other ones. Or I thought I did. Oh, Spock says how it's a soulless society,
Mhm.
which was an interesting comment. Um, what else? What else? I think the next one is at the very end. So you go ahead.
There's one part where Spock just clubs a dude to knock him out, and Kirk's like, "Isn't that kind of old fashioned?" Or
Yes.
isn't that somewhat old fashioned?
Yes.
I guess because he didn't do the Vulcan nerve pinch. Instead, he just bang,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
just socked a guy. And then the
He
other one that I
did.
have is at the very end. It may be the same one that you have.
You'd make a splendid computer, Mr. Spock. And he's like, "That is very kind of you, Captain." Is that the same one?
No, actually, it's not. That's not the one that
Oh.
I have, but that one is a good one too. It's right after Landru explodes. Kirk just goes, "Well, Marpon, you're on your own." Like
Oh yeah, he does.
we have just completely destroyed your society. Good luck fixing it. We're
Good
gonna fuck
luck.
off now. And it
I
turns out they
mean,
don't. Like when they're back on the Enterprise, they say they sent a team down to help them, restore normalcy to
mhm.
their. It's gonna take a long time, I think. But they did
Yeah,
send like a
essentially
team down,
brainwashed.
yeah, to help them acclimate to life now that they're not under Landry's control. But I just thought that was
Which
hilarious.
I'm curious, do they have like teams that they always kind of have on the ship for these instances where they need to
It's
fix societies?
it seems like it because they did the same thing in Miri. They left a group of like
Yep.
teachers and whatnot behind to help the
So they
kids.
must have like someone on board at all times, and then when there's not, they go back and get more people, or they beam on there.
So I think what actually happens is they send down a. This is just my speculation. I don't know that this is spelled out anywhere. They send down a
Mhm.
team to get started, and then they send a message to Starfleet Command, and Starfleet dispatches a ship full of like people specifically trained in this
Mm,
stuff, and then the
okay.
original team will like rendezvous with the Enterprise later by a shuttlecraft or by a different ship taking them to catch up with wherever it is, like something of that
Got
nature.
it. Got it.
Like the people that they leave
Makes sense.
behind will eventually make their way back to the Enterprise. It might just be a while. Or they may get
Got it.
transferred off onto a different assignment. Like that might be it. They might not be on the Enterprise anymore.
Hmm.
And then the next
Okay.
time the Enterprise stops over at a starbase, they'll pull on more crew. That's all just speculation on my part. Uh,
That
but
makes
that's
sense.
how I would think that it would work.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So
Anyways,
if that's
I
it for lines and moments, then that'll bring us to
think
that's
so.
what they said.
All right. Do you want to go first?
Uh, sure, I can. Uh,
Yeah, you go first.
You're not of the body. You couldn't be.
You will come.
You must come.
You will obey.
We'll come in our own time.
We're being probed.
You come.
Yay. That's what they said for season 1, episode 21, the return of the Archons.
It was very Mariner of you right there. This was a good episode for that's what they said.
Yeah.
So
There was a lot more coming, FYI. Like, literally, people just saying come, and I was like, I can't keep doing these. There's too many. Like, it was like a variation, like, you come, like, and I was like, this is unnecessary. It's not that creative.
Yeah, right. Like, those are the easy ones. You got to get the ones that are
Mhm.
way more double entendre and innuendo.
Exactly.
So that will bring us to episode trivia from Memory Alpha. Okay, so
Give it to me.
this episode started out as a candidate to be the first pilot alongside the Cage and the women, later Mud's women. After the Cage was chosen by NBC, Roddenberry's story idea rested for more than 2 years. Freelance writer Boris Sobelman later picked up Roddenberry's original story, developed it further, retitling it The Return of the Archons. And it says...
I couldn't imagine if this was the pilot.
Right? Like,
I mean, the pilot was, considering what we've seen now, it was definitely a little different. But this was very different.
This was very different. Well, and this would have been the first pilot. So this would have been with like the Cage, what we saw in the menagerie. So it would have been with Pike, and it would have been it would have been very strange. And it says that the story premise was called The Perfect World, and Memory Alpha has a production timeline based on all these different things. Like, they cite all their sources for them, but the story premise was The Perfect World in March of 1964. Story outline, Roddenberry called it Paradise XML. That was July of 64. Another story outline, Landry's Paradise in July of 64. And then Sobelman story outline, The Return of the Archons in 1966. It was revised and then revised again by Gene Kuhn in September of 66. And then Sobelman did the first and second draft teleplays in October of 66. They had a revised teleplay in November. Final draft by Gene Kuhn in November of 66. Revised final draft by Roddenberry in November of 66. Then, like, additional revisions all the way through December. And it was finally filmed December 6th through December 14th of 1966. So, like,
damn,
this episode went through a lot. And that's not to say that other episodes didn't go through that much, but that 2-year gap from 64 to 66 where it sat as an idea on Roddenberry's desk is something.
That is something.
And indeed, the location scenes for this episode were filmed at the 40 Acres Backlot in Culver City, California, the same place where Miri and a later episode were shot.
Knew it.
This is the first mention of the Federation's Prime Directive. Confusingly, a second Prime Directive is discussed later in the episode, that of Landry's Society, where Landry states the good of the body is the Prime Directive. This is mentioned by Landry and Kirk several times during a conversation, while the Federation's Prime Directive is mentioned only once. Yeah, that was, like, I knew, like, I was like, oh, that's the first time they've talked about the Prime Directive. And then later, they talk about Landry's Prime Directive. I'm like, you couldn't have used a different term for that. Like, you had to use Prime Directive for both.
Confused it a little bit.
Yeah. Get a thesaurus, guys. And then, apparently, in a issue of TV Guide in August of 1991. Roddenberry picked this as one of his 10 favorite episodes for the franchise's 25th anniversary. What? Why, Gene?
Why? Dude. No. Just no.
Because Gene Roddenberry has an ego and it was his idea, so he probably liked it the most. But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess.
Maybe just because it's so different.
Maybe. I don't know. It's
I don't know.
interesting.
There's just like so many like plot holes, loopholes. Yeah.
I just think it's just so different from the other 20 episodes we've watched so far. Like it has which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I guess. It's just not what it's not what I'm looking for in an episode of Star. Like I said before, I'll say it again. It feels like an episode of like a different show, like Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, something like that.
Definitely.
But yeah, so it's one of Gene's top 10. What did I say? Yeah, one of his top 10 favorite episodes. So there you go.
Okay.
That will do it for episode trivia. Almost.
You got this.
Almost had a Landry there. That will bring us to spoilers without context. And if I remember correctly, I went first last time.
Okay.
So we will bring Ensign Kayla's. I pointed in the right direction the first try this time. We'll bring Ensign Kayla's spoilers without context up on the screen.
That way.
Yes.
I'm mirrored, so it's opposite. Yes, we had we had similar ones, but
Yes, we did.
I did the Purge because clearly that is the Purge night when that is happening. The red hour, and then the little Jawas because of the monks. Because I was gonna do monks, but I was like, but they're also like Jawas and like Star Wars.
Yeah.
And yeah, Landrew reminded me of Vigo from Ghostbusters too. It's Vigo. Just I think like the gold and like the projector presence of him. And then, anytime anything is like Wizard of Oz, I have to use Wizard of Oz with Landrew and the machine and all of that. Especially him being a projection and the wizard was a projection.
Yeah.
They really like to use those tropes in here. I wonder if he liked Wizard of Oz.
Maybe.
Probably. At this point, it was like, what, 20 years before? When did Wizard of Oz come out? 40 something?
1939. Yeah.
39.
So,
and it was around
almost
40.
30 years. Yeah, almost 30 years since Wizard
So for
of
them,
Oz.
they were probably like, it's classic cinema.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's what we say now too, but even more so then.
It hasn't been that long.
Yeah.
I was thinking of something more recent. Like, I mean, we're getting close though. When did man, we're coming up on 20 years since the first Iron Man movie with Robert Downey Jr. came out.
Oh, don't say that. We still have 5 more years.
4.5.
Okay.
All
right.
So I particularly enjoy the Jawas and Vigo. It's Vigo.
Thank you very much.
Good pulls. So we will bring my spoilers without context up on the screen, and yes, we'll start with the Purge. We both used the Purge because I mean that was fairly obvious. That was low hanging fruit for this one, but we had to. I used the Twilight Zone title card because it should be obvious. I've said it enough throughout this this Trek retrek that it felt more like an episode of Twilight Zone to me than an episode of Star Trek. I used the the council from Hot Fuzz, the greater good, because that's what it reminded me of.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
the good of the body, the greater good, the mysterious cult. Yeah.
I
And then,
watched that a long time ago. I don't remember that at all.
yeah. And then HAL 9000 for Landrew, because malevolent. I mean, I guess Landry wasn't really malevolent himself. It was just itself. It was just
Trying to control a lot of people's minds. I think that's a little malevolent.
it was just doing what it was programmed to do. And it was trying to do it for the good of society.
True.
Just more misguided than malevolent. But yeah.
Yeah,
So
we'll say that.
that does it for memes and spoilers without context. So that will bring us to ranking the episode. Ensign Kayla,
Oh boy.
how do you rank the return of the Archons?
After talking it through, as entertaining and as clusterfucky as it is, I don't know how much I could recommend it beyond its entertainment value, and especially because it uses a lot of the same tropes. Like, it's very different, but also uses a lot of the same tropes that we've seen. I think, like, very different stylistically than the rest of Trek, and then similar tropes. But because of that, I don't think I would recommend it. Like, you don't have to watch it. So I think I'm gonna go with Lieutenant.
Okay.
Final answer.
All right. I agree, but lean much more towards the it's not necessary viewing that I'm giving it Ensign.
Okay.
It's such a weird thing because I do feel like it didn't feel like a chore to watch. It just had me scratching my head and go, what the fuck? How is this? What, like, what?
Yeah, it was
How is this
entertaining.
Star Trek? But yeah, for the purposes of watching the original series, I think this is definitely a very skippable episode. There's nothing in it that I would say is necessary to know. I mean, I guess Lieutenant in the terms of, yeah, it is kind of one that is watch it if you have time.
It's entertaining.
Yeah, so maybe I'll go Lieutenant on it, but it's like the bottom end of Lieutenant. It's barely a Lieutenant.
So is that your final answer?
Yeah, because I think with the way that our ranking is set up, as Ensign is just absolutely don't bother. Like, you don't need to watch this. And Lieutenant is like, watch it if you have time, and I think you should watch it if you have time. But
yeah,
if you don't, definitely skip this one. Yeah. So yeah, we'll give a unanimous rank of Lieutenant to the Return of the Archons, and that will bring us to the next episode, episode 22, Space Seed. While on patrol in deep space, Captain Kirk and his crew find and revive a genetically engineered world conqueror and his compatriots from Earth's 20th century. That's what IMDb.com says about Space Seed, by the way. So,
that's a very interesting name title.
Yes. Space Seed.
Yeah. That'll be an interesting one.
For
Spoiler
many
alert.
reasons. Yes. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about with that one. So,
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, either, live in the chat or on the replay. We greatly appreciate it. We love talking about these episodes, especially in the chat with y'all. And tune in next week, same time, same place as usual. Tomorrow I will be doing a stream on Ahsoka sans Johnny. Yes. It will be the Women of Star Wars stream talking about Ahsoka with Allison, Yoko, and Colleen. Very excited about that. So tune in at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. And yeah, if you want to follow us, you can follow us on all our socials at GTFO channel. Or if you want to email us, you can email us at channelgtfo@gmail.com. I always say at the beginning. I'm like, wait, that's going to confuse people because there's ats in an email. And shoot, I was just going to say something else. And now I forgot. Oh, smack that like, smack that subscribe, smack that bell icon. Can't forget that. Got to smack all the things. But yeah, thanks again, everyone. I think we got everything. Until next time, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.